I read an article in the paper. It was about a young boy who stabbed a young girl to death. And then I saw a piece on the news about 4 months later, and again, it was a young boy who stabbed a young girl to death. And they were at opposite ends of the country. And I just thought, why? It hurt my heart, do you know what I mean? One as a father, but also just as a human being, it made me wonder what's going wrong with our society, where young boys, and they are boys, they're not men, you know, where young boys are committing these horrific acts, and what's happened to us, globally. And then there's that beautiful saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So in that many respects, I thought that we're all slightly accountable in certain ways, because I've kind of got myself together a little bit, but I judged it straight away and I blamed the parents. And then I thought to myself, well, no, stop judging. What if it's not? What if it's not the parents? Well, literally, me and my mate were sitting in the car. My mate's Phil Barantini, by the way, who directed it.
So Stephen and Phil Barantini, our amazing director, made this film Boiling Point. And Plan B, which is Brad Pitt's company, brought Phil in to talk to them and said, what about trying to do something in the television space? What about trying to do a one-shot TV drama? And he said, oh, that could be really interesting. And he took it to Stephen.
So basically, the original concept was like 8 hours and find a character, create a story about this character, and then make 8 hours worth of 1 hour shots and, you know, make a series out of it. And I said, no. I said, that would be boring. I don't want to do that. I don't want it to be about me and one character. We were literally in the car and I went, I know what it is.
And Stephen said, I'd like to look at knife crime.
And I just went, boom. It's about a young boy, and it's da-da-da, and it's this, and I had the outline for all 4 episodes in my head, and it literally just come that moment, that split second. And Phil was like, that sounds brilliant. And then I knew that I wanted Jack Thorne, who's a phenomenal writer.
And then, thankfully, he brought me into the mix, and I was like, yes, please, show me where to sign.
When I first read the script, it blew my mind. Like, it felt like I just knew all these characters, and I could visualise the whole thing.
Just so well written that it kind of requires you to just be there.
I co-wrote it with Jack Thorne. It was an idea that I had in my head. I had a kind of outline for the 4 episodes.
It was really important to Stephen that this wasn't a show that made easy answers.
As a collective, we didn't want it to be a whodunit. It's why did he do it?
Oh. So when Stephen first talked to me about it, the one sort of stipulation he made was, I don't want this to be a drama that blames the parents.
Yes, which I think is really clever.
It's really important.
I didn't want Jamie to come from a background where his mum was a drinker or his dad was violent and aggressive. I wanted to eliminate all of those things, to try and get the audience to ask the question, why? But also, in the same respect, think that could be me.
Someone that worked with me, Mariella Johnson, said, I think you should look at incel culture. And I had some understanding of it and some, I'd read articles about it, but I hadn't really gone down those holes. And then I spent a long time in a lot of very strange places, looking at a lot of strange content. And the thing that surprised me was how attractive it was.
Which is so frightening.
It's so frightening. And that thing of going, if I was a 13-year-old boy and I was told there is a reason why you feel unattractive, there's a reason why you feel isolated, there's a reason why you're not sure how to talk in certain situations, and that's because the world is against you. And the reason why the world is against you is because 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men, that this world is female-dominated, and you need to find ways to reset the balance. And the more of these videos I watched, the more convincing I found it. And that's when I started to work out how we could write Jamie.
What Jack Thorne is so brilliant at is being so brutal and so human.
This show is about windows, right? You get 4 different windows into Jamie's world, but it was working out where the windows were best placed so that we could understand him. And so we quickly worked out, we're going to do the arrest, we're going to do school, then we're going to spend some time with Jamie, and then we're going to spend some time with the family. This wasn't about othering Jamie. Don't put this in the extraordinary. Make this feel like it could happen to you, because that is the reality of what is happening in our world.
We wanted to grab the attention of the audience. And in the same respect, we wanted our audience to work out what was happening the same way as the characters in the house were working out what was happening. We knew from the very beginning that it was going to be a one-shot series.
And it didn't complicate the writing at all, actually. Stephen said when we were working on the script, never go anywhere without a character. Never go anywhere where you're not being led by a person.
You have to make sure that the camera always takes you somewhere. There's always a reason to go somewhere. You don't don't just drift off and float.
And so the script is a relay race.
Yeah.
You're constantly going, okay, I'm telling this bit of the story, now I'm leaving this bit, and in order to be able to leave this bit, I've got to leave to another story. And so you're constantly working out who the people are that can take you to these different places and where you can get those shards of light from. That there's this kind of beauty to go, okay, I'm in a corridor now, what the hell do I do? And being able to tell an incomplete story is actually a real privilege. That in TV, the aim is always to go, okay, we need to understand everything. We need to understand everything that's going on all the time. We can cut anywhere, we can go anywhere, we can see everything. So let's go inside the legal process. Let's go inside what Eddie is feeling at any time of the day. Let's see everything. And actually, by only being able to see some things, it sort of allows you to have a more profound story. It sort of encourages an audience to sit forward, and it encourages you as a writer to challenge yourself as to what is the important pieces to show. What is the pieces that are going to unlock a conversation? What are the pieces that are going to make people think?
My wife Anna, you know, she's my right hand. She's more than my right hand. She's the brains behind the whole organisation. And she's magnificent at kind of helping me pull these ideas out of my head as well. So she was integral to that whole process. I said to Jack, look, in episode 3, I think I know what it is. I just want the kid and a child psychologist, and I want them to be on like the 4th or 5th meeting. I just want you, Jack, to do me a favour and write me your version of a David Mamet play.
No pressure.
And he was like, is that the only note? I went, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. And he was like, but how am I going to? I went, you can do it, Jack. Of course you can do it.
My biggest fear going into it was knowing the kind of cliche therapist that we've seen, and this script, like, hats off to Jack and Stephen, because it's just everything that you hope for. Like, she's a human being who is complex and is battling with like things that professional women do, which is gorgeous. But also, the further that the script went on, there was no point in improvising, because it was so beautifully written and orchestrated that you were literally like, these characters are just alive.
Owen could go, well, I don't know if I'd say that, and Jack would be like, well, what would you say then? And he'd say it because we're not teenage boys, you know what I mean? We might be able to write as much as we best possibly can for the teenage boy, but Owen knows the dialogue he would say in that environment and in that situation. So then the next phase was basically, we were Frankenstein. I came up with the body parts. Jack injected the spirit, and then the rest of the cast and the crew gave it the soul. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Alfred Hitchcock has got this quote. He says, dialogue is just the words actors say while their faces tell the story, which is something I've always believed. And in this show, the faces carry everything.
It was nerve-wracking reading episode 3 and then realising, oh, we need to cast a 13-year-old lad who can really, like, go on a journey emotionally.
No disrespect, but Owen doesn't have a lot of experience at all. This is the first thing he's ever done. We had over 500 boys on tape that sent in tapes, and then we have the most fantastic casting director, Shaheen Beg. She's a genius, and she does find young talent as well. Do you know what I mean? Beautifully. So they narrowed it down, and then we had a workshop with, I think it was 5 in the end. So we spent the day with 5 of them. But instantly, what we wanted to do was kind of break that old-fashioned mold of, you know, look, they've been through a long process. They'd had like 4 or 5 callbacks. So this particular day, we had the 5 of them in with the parents. And straight away, in the first thing in the morning, I said, look, you know the way we're going to pick one of these lads today, and then we're going to go out and cast for the rest of the parts. I said, let's not do that. I said, there's roles here that these kids can play if they don't get that role. Just because it's heartbreaking, do you know what I mean? Especially if you're a young kid, you're going for this thing, and then it's like, oh, sorry, it didn't work. Better luck next time. It's like, oh, well, so that's what we did straight away.
This started with a phone call from Stephen saying, how do we tell that story in 4 one-hour shots?
I always wanted to tell a tale over a long time span. but not do it the way normal chronological stories work. Each episode takes 3 weeks. Basically what we do is we spend the first week going through the script.
Our first week is spent literally walking through scene by scene.
Should we pop inside?
So it's like a play. We really dissect it and we make sure that everyone's on the same page, literally, and we know what we're doing and why we're saying the things. And the cast really get to understand the language and what we're doing in the text.
The 2 weeks before the shoot, it was about forgetting yourself, forgetting your ego, forgetting everything, and just going, we're all a part of this project. We're all here because we really believe in this story.
We're going to be going through it a lot, over and over again. And it becomes muscle memory, you know?
And in the second week, you choreograph it with Matt Lewis, who's our camera operator.
And we do the tech rehearsal with all the crew.
So we did the whole thing, and then it's a ballet.
That week, you know, we put a lens on it, we start moving through the space, we start realising what doesn't work, kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back a little bit.
It's good that they happen now. It's just rehearsals. And look, we're all doing it without our script already anyway. And then the last week, we get 10 chances to a day at shooting 1 take.
So the last week, roughly, we try and set up for 2 takes a day. So you have 1 go in the morning, so that's like at 10:30. Everything's in position and everybody knows what they're doing, and then we have a take. And then we'll give notes, and then in the afternoon, we have another take.
We did 2 takes a day.
Yeah.
But by that point, like, we did just know it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't thinking about the lines
No.
at this point, which is crazy when you think about it. Like, the amount of script that we had to get through.
It's mad.
Yeah.
I don't know how I learned that.
I don't know how you learned that. I remember rocking up on day 1 and you knew your line.
Yeah, because I was so worried I wasn't going to learn it, so I was on my script every day.
Look, without sounding pretentious, you know what I mean? You do feel the pressure, but then you also hit this kind of place of zen. Athletes call it when you're in the flow, don't they? Yeah. You know what I mean? When you just, nothing else exists and you're just in the flow. And as an actor, you know, that's what you're, again, without trying to sound pretentious, but that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming for that kind of connection of mindfulness, you know what I mean? Where it just comes natural.
What if someone makes a mistake?
Well, then you know what it's like. You just kind of carry on. Unless it's one of those things where the lights went out one time in the police station, so we had to stop. But the first episode that you see is the second take. That's the second take we had in its entirety. And then the final episode, that's the 14th take. I mean, if you're in the first 5 minutes and maybe, I don't know, we tried to go in that episode 4 when we come out the shed and we walk through the garden and then he goes into the house. The door was shut. So it's like, oh, shit, okay, all right, well, we can't go into the house because the door's shut. Okay, let's go back.
Let's put the bike back where it was and let's go again.
And let's go again. So then we started that again. There was only a couple of incidents where we did actually start again and have another retake.
If we had a choice, I think we'd both go 1 take.
Always.
Yeah.
For the rest of our lives.
Because when you're like cutting and stopping and stuff, you wouldn't get the full that emotion.
Yeah, you don't get the build-up. Whereas, like, by that point, you had to explode. And I had to explode in my way. Like, there's no other way. And you only get that from being in that for an hour.
Phil was so generous and so clever at getting everyone on the same page. So by the time it like came to shooting, if for whatever reason, like, we veered off the path that we had made in those 2 weeks, all of us just lent in and went with it. Like, he essentially, like, he built a football team.
Everyone was excited about what we were doing.
Ready? Okay. Gonna do a take. Let's go.
Before each take, my heart is pounding and absolutely everyone feels it because everyone knows how important their job is.
Action.
It takes a real army of people to pull it together, you know, because there's not one person on that set who's not important.
We're a football team, and as soon as the whistle goes, we're off. I've never been so in sync with a crew, ever. Because we're all on the same ship together, basically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As soon as the whistle goes, it's all of us as a collective. And everybody has that overall objective to reach that finish line. You're a collective. You move together. You're a living organism that moves. So it was important that, you know, we really took you on the journey and showed you what the possible capabilities were going to be throughout this episode. And it's not, we were never going, oh, wow, look what we can do. It was about the movement of the camera and being immersed within that story. And each piece of the jigsaw is absolutely integral, because if we don't have that particular piece, we don't have that final picture. They've took the camera from handheld and they've attached it to a crane, which is on an electrical kind of contraption thing, which is moving straight away.
And then Phil called me up and he said, Matt and I think we found a way to make the camera fly.
And it looks almost European in its style, do you know what I mean? It doesn't look like a British drama, no disrespect. Like I said, there's no small roles, there's only small actors. So if you eliminate that kind of ego, look, our industry's full of fucking egos, do you know what I mean? Let's be honest, there's loads of them out there. Some of them are shocking. I feel if you empower your crew, if you empower the people that you're with, then you get the finest performances and you get the best work from everyone. It's a team sport, you know what I mean? You need everybody to make it what it is. What we do is unreal, but in this respect, it's kind of like you don't do it for applause or accolade or anything like that. You do it because it's in your heart and soul. Yeah.
Adolescence is not a whodunit, it's a whydunit. How did this boy end up in this place?
The theme of the show is reality. The youngsters don't live in a blinkered world where they don't know that these things happen.
Probably the whole series is how interesting it is what people present versus what's within.
It's a heavy subject.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we need to look at.
Yeah,
as a society, basically.
It could happen to anybody, you know what I mean? We thought it'd be interesting to shine a light on the devastation that causes, you know, the ripple effect that has on everybody.
And seeing how kind of social media can affect our children these days.
Should be something that makes people think, sparks debate, and opens the door for other directors, writers to feel that they can show the harsher sides of reality.
What we're not saying with this show is that there's loads and loads of Jamies out there, that there's, you know, that because your son is in his room and he's shut the door, that means that he's going to inflict harm on another person. We don't want to be a show that suggests that. Jamie is a product of a lot of different things, but at the same time, being aware of what your kid is consuming, being aware of what's out there, I think is really important. And it's awoken anxiety in me, and it's awoken conversations with my wife about how we handle all this.
You see in this show that human connection is being lost. You know, every parent's going to watch this show. When they finish watching this show, they're going to burst into their kid's room and be asking them, what's going on?
And give him a hug.
You? Yeah, and give him a hug.
Are you all right?
And that's all we were trying to do. We're not pointing the finger at anyone. We're saying, can we just have a look at this?
We're not trying to give answers. We're not trying to lay blame particularly. It's a really complicated time, but we need to be talking about these things.
I'm sorry, son. I just hope it creates debate and I hope it creates conversation between parent and child.